2023. The first case that I have on the calendar is 20 CR 00267 Wycliffe. I don't want to mispronounce the last name. Don't want to mispronounce the last name terribly. Looks like it's Chakua, Chakua.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Is that correct?
That's the correct pronunciation.
Oh, my goodness.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning. Come on up, sir.
I'm Jay Shrinath. I'm the attorney for Mr. Chakua.
Right.
And we are ready.
Come on up.
Oh. Would like to have a brief pre-trial with the state, but subject to that, we're ready to proceed.
Okay.
In my state will ready this morning, we have Officer Orca who is present.
Okay.
We are still waiting on one more officer.
You're waiting on one. Okay. Okay. All right. I'll give you all some time. Morning.
Good afternoon, Judge. Apologize for the
Look, good morning. I know you told me good afternoon. I'm used to seeing you in the afternoon.
If those who just walked in here for traffic, you need to go to 2F. If you're here for traffic, the courtroom, you need to go to 2F. Here for traffic, report to 2F.
You know. Are you here for traffic, ma'am?
No, ma'am.
Okay. We are.
Yeah.
Mhm. And then the second case that I have on the calendar, 21 CR 0000349E, is Christopher Chavez. Good morning.
I'm just gonna update it offer on that case. I'm gonna speak to my client. I think it might be able to resolve it today.
Okay, great. Thank you. And the third case I have is 20 CR 00518E, Christopher Coleman.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Morning.
I am here for Mr. Coleman. I do not see Mr. Coleman in the courtroom, but give me an opportunity to speak with him. I did file an immunity motion for Mr. Coleman. I'd like an opportunity, if it's not heard today, which I don't think it'd be heard today, Judge, just some time before the jury trial, which we have requested and put the date on notice for, if those motions can be heard at that time, Judge.
All right. State.
Yes, Your Honor, that's correct. I'm not gonna, this motion not be heard. It wasn't filed, they didn't receive notice of that until yesterday. And so we just didn't have the opportunity to subpoena any of our witnesses. Like Ms. Helen stated, if we are gonna proceed, I would probably just ask that it be placed on a jury trial calendar and we hear that motion prior to trial.
Okay, that's fine. All right, and the next case is 20 CR 00147 Is that Jolene Lukes?
Yes, Your Honor, that is also my case. Patrice Helen with the Public Defender's Office. Ms. Lucas is here present in court. Judge, I also, same announcement as the last case, I filed that immunity motion actually this week, Judge, and we like the state to have an opportunity to read that motion and reply. I don't believe it's going to be heard today, so we just like some time for the jury trial, Judge, to hear that motion.
All right. Now, are you gonna reset them now? Are you gonna give me? Oh, I have my little paper now.
The announcement on that one would be the same. We just kind of noted, any of our victims relatives.
Mhm.
It would actually be heard prior to the jury trial.
Okay. Oh, jury trials further notice at this time. So the jury trial is further noticed at this time. We don't have a definite date as of today.
Mr. Judge.
So 3 and 4 will be further notice.
Yes, Your Honor.
Position 5, case number 20 CR 005376E, Desmond McLeod.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. Are you representing Mr. McLeod?
Yes, I am. I think we went to the draft.
You're muted, by the way, Judge.
Thank you. So that's June 27th for position 6. It is already set for trial in Odyssey.
That's correct, Judge.
All right, we'll hold for the attorney. Mr. McLeod, your attorney is Christopher Campbell. Okay. All right. Thank you. Are you all here for motions calendar or traffic court?
Motions calendar, that is Mr. Coleman.
Oh, good. Okay, good. We have a little mix up with the notices. I'm trying to.
And I'm glad that Your Honor said that. I had several clients yesterday say I didn't receive notice at all. And so I'm glad the court is giving Mr. Coleman the opportunity to appear, Judge.
Right. I think last week we had many more people, so I think they have rectified the problem at this point, so. Were you here last time? Oh, I think I was doing the traffic last time. Williams, I switched. And she sent me a text. I have all of your calendar down here. Because sometimes they don't know which courtroom, so they'll just put default. I said, y'all can't put a default. Rather put no court, but you gotta put something. And Mr. Campbell, good morning. How are you? Good. What's your announcement on Mr. McLeod's case?
So we, motion to no longer needed, stay as applied. Subject to pre-trial negotiation.
All right, what say you state?
Your Honor, I believe your case will then need to be set for the next jury trial.
All right. And is that further notice? All right, we are going to further notice your case for jury trial. And we don't have that lovely date just quite yet.
I'll look out for it, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, have a good weekend.
And Your Honor, I do believe that that's all the cases the public defender's office has. May I be excused?
Yes, we're not spending any more time together, huh? We will see you on the next calendar.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank
Have a
you.
good weekend. Comes your river. This look like, okay. Did you bring enough?
For one,
Uh-huh.
the other officer, Officer Lasik is present, and so the state will be ready to go
Okay.
as we wrap up with pre-trial negotiations.
Okay. That's him. Oh, baby.
Are you here for a traffic case? 2C, 2F, I'm sorry. Courtroom 2F. 2F, you're in G33, you need to go to 2F. All right, you're welcome.
No. We're having a plea. Okay.
All the way around here.
Guys tell me. I think the one here is probably.
So you're here for traffic?
Yeah, that's in my stay, I was gonna go on the courtroom.
Yeah, should follow those gentlemen there.
Going to 2F, there's two gentlemen that's headed to the elevators now.
I'm not,
All right, I got it.
I understand. I understand.
You said something about.
Yes, so if you want to waive his presence, that's that you stipulate for identification.
Oh, yeah.
obviously, They won't be able to
Yeah.
identify.
Yeah, okay, that's not gonna be an issue.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was looking for
I
that.
think
Unless it
that,
came in.
and then I was also asking.
Did
if
you
have
guys get
doctor's
paperwork
notes,
for the-
detailing his condition and the advice not to travel.
This is from the last time because
There's
I'm trying to get for today. Let me see. Yeah, he just sent me something.
Okay.
My email for some reason, here's the note. I don't know why, but I haven't gotten. Let me forward. You want me to forward it?
Sure.
Well, I think it should have come to you.
Oh, I'll check. I don't see it yet, but we'll give it some time. I'll just have to refresh.
I've got it here.
Okay.
I need to resend it.
Okay.
Steve, do you wanna do your plea first or your motion?
I can handle that. We can do that later.
Yes.
This is 21 CR 0000349E. Mr. Christopher Chavez. All right, I understand that this is a negotiated plea.
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right. The charges, it looks like that you're pleading guilty to the one count of equipment violation, second count of DUI unless safe, and a third count of DUI per se, with the offense date of January the 29th, 2021. State,
Your Honor, Mr. Chavez will be entering a guilty plea to one count of reckless driving this morning and one count of the equipment violation. The state's recommended sentence as to one count of reckless driving will be 12 months to serve 3 days, credit for time served 3 days, balance probated, a $1,000 fine, 40 hours of community service, an alcohol drug evaluation, and any treatment if deemed necessary, one risk reduction, one victim impact panel. He'll also be entering a guilty plea to an equipment violation, and the state's recommended sentence would be 12 months of probation to run consecutive to the count of reckless driving. The state is agreeable that if the conditions are all complete, the probation can go non-reporting. Mr. Chavez does reside outside of the state. The state is agreeable to mail in or phone in probation. And the remaining charge will be null pros, Your Honor, and I have submitted that null pros to the court.
Right, Miss Younger, let's, we gotta fix that one because it's been messed up. The DUI. Just reckless. And equipment violation. May have to re-sign.
I can fix it. Normally I just put the original charges, but I'll put what he's.
But I looked on the plea sheet, so I got it correct here. All right, and tell me your name, counsel. I'm
Of
sorry.
course, Erin Donalek from Scott Smith's office.
It's like that's not Scott Smith. So
It is
I got
not.
it. Donnelly,
Donalek, DOHNALEK.
gotcha. All right, is that your understanding of the state's offer today?
It is.
And you gotta take the DUI off of there. The first page needs to be, so yes. Okay, so this, so let me make sure we're correct. We're no crossing both. There were two counts of two DUI, let's say, and a DUI per se, correct?
I'm showing it was count 1 as equipment violation, count 2 was the DUI less safe, and count 3 was the DUI per se.
Right, so 2 and 3. So
I'm amending count 3 per se to the reckless.
okay, so then
Yes, Your
that's
Honor.
correct, okay. Making sure we had that correct. And then on this one, we gotta do, oh, you put it right. Oh, I moved it. Gotcha, that's correct, yes. All right, just making sure we have all our documents correct. All right, if that is your understanding, counsel, I will get ready to take the guilty plea. Do you stipulate venue, identity, and factual basis?
I do.
All right, Mr. Chavez, I understand that you wish to plead guilty today to 2 counts. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And that would be 1 count of equipment violation, and the second count is reckless driving, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, and I need to ask you a series of questions to make sure that you understand your guilty plea and that it is freely and voluntarily given. First question I have for you, and let me swear you in first. Raise your right hand. Do you affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under the penalty of perjury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Are you under the influence presently of any medication, drugs, or alcohol?
No, Your Honor.
Are you satisfied with the services and representation of your attorney?
Yes, Your Honor.
And do you understand that by pleading guilty today, you're giving up and waiving the right to the presumption of innocence?
Yes, Your Honor.
That you're giving up and waiving the right to remain silent and not testify against yourself?
Yes, Your Honor.
That you're giving up and waiving the right to trial by judge or jury, whichever you prefer?
Yes, Your Honor.
And are you prepared and agree to waive these rights today?
Yes, Your Honor.
Has anyone told you that you will receive a lesser sentence for pleading guilty?
No, Your Honor.
Has anyone told you that I promised you anything to plead guilty?
No, Your Honor.
And do you understand that if you're currently on probation, probation may be revoked because of this guilty plea here today?
Yes, Your Honor.
And do you offer this guilty plea freely and voluntarily with a full understanding of the charges against you?
Yes, Your Honor.
So again, as to the charge of equipment violation, how do you plead?
Guilty, Your Honor.
And as to the charge of reckless driving, how do you plead?
Guilty, Your Honor.
All right, I will accept your guilty plea. I'm going to sign a couple of documents here. And let me say this to you, you do understand your conditions of the probation. Once you've completed those conditions, and I believe you're going non-reporting, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, so you've got to complete quite a few things here. You also have a fine of $1,000, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
40 hours community service, ADET, RR, which is risk reduction, one victim impact panel. So get those done. The sooner you get it done, the less will be in your life. How about that?
Yes, Your Honor.
And then you will go non-reporting, okay? And is there anything else, council or state, that I need to pick up? Or did I leave out anything?
No, Your Honor, you did not.
Okay, all right, I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, that will end your business for today, and I will accept your plea.
Thank you so much. Oh, and counsel, before you step out, did you fill out a probation information sheet?
I don't think so. I was just about to. ask.
Okay.
Mhm.
Just so he could submit all of his documents to probation.
Um,
You're here for traffic? It's a 2F. Courtroom 2F. So I didn't see my lawyer up there. Yeah, 2F.
They don't want to believe you for some reason. Like, no, I want to stay here. I don't want to- Well, she can tomorrow, or it will just depend. Orca, state court, state. Fulton County.
Let me make sure.
Okay.
Yes, Your Honor, the state is ready on position number 1, Wycliffe Chakua.
Okay. Well, council has her items here. Hold on one quick second. Let me get her. Not that I think you would take her cell phone, but want to make sure she gets her items off the table. Oh, they very rarely give them back. Thank you. All right, I am calling case number 1, 20 CR 00267 F, State versus Wycliffe Chakua. And, the offense dated 11/1/2018. I'm not sure, are these the same charges, the, 4 counts? DUI, let's say, failure to maintain lane or improper lane change, failure to obey traffic signs and signals, and center lane violation. Are those the charges stated?
Yes, Your Honor, 4 charges.
4 charges, right? All right. And, this is a, hearing regarding a particularized motion to suppress filed by the, defendant and counsel. And it's Mr., is it Shrina?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, State, you may proceed. I'm sorry, Mr. Shrina, if you may proceed.
Well, Your Honor, before we get started with testimony from the officers, just a couple of preliminary issues to address.
Okay,
I did receive a waiver of the defendant's presence yesterday evening around 6 o'clock. This morning, I did receive a doctor's note in reference to that I have been able to review. State has no objection to the waiver of the defendant's presence, so long as defense counsel stipulates to identification, because obviously the officers would not be able to identify him with him not being here. And I believe defense counsel has agreed to stipulate to identification in this case.
okay.
Is that
And
correct?
counsel, you're stipulating to identity?
Yes, Your Honor, we do. And Judge, my client, because of medical reasons and because of his doctor's advice against traveling, that's the only reason he's not here. I did file a defendant's waiver of presence with the court yesterday that he has signed, acknowledging that he's not going to be here and would like to proceed with the hearing in his absence.
All right, I'm making sure, Ms. Younger, we have that.
I've got an extra copy here.
She's printing it for me now. Thank you. All right, anything else preliminary?
Yes, Your Honor.
State?
Secondly, I do want to just confirm for the record the issues that we will be proceeding on this morning.
Okay,
I have a particularized motion that was filed on November 1st of 2022, in which the defense attorney challenges reasonable articulable suspicion and probable cause. Reasonable articulable suspicion for the stop and then probable cause for the arrest. I just want to confirm that those are the 2 issues we'll be proceeding on this morning.
That's correct, Your Honor.
okay.
And Your Honor, finally, with regard to the state's evidence that it will show this morning, I will be playing the body cam of Officer Voronkov, and I will be specifically playing from about 2:05 to about 13 minutes, so about 11 minutes of footage. And I just want to put that on the record because that is the relevant footage to these issues.
Okay.
And Your Honor, I think defense counsel is willing to stipulate to video.
Oh, that'd be good. Okay.
Do you have the timestamp?
Yeah.
Do you know which video it is?
Yes. Okay. Within about 30 seconds.
But is it on Officer Voronkov's body cam?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Your Honor, I think that is all of the preliminary issues.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
My laptop may make a small noise. Sorry for the interruption when it comes. on.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Your Honor, at this time, the state will invoke the rule of sequestration. We have two officers that'll be testifying this morning, Officer Lasik and Officer Voronkov. We'll start with Officer Lasik.
Okay. Yeah. I know, I cannot. I was thinking why it doesn't come up on my screen. Oh, because it's on the. Um. Wait, I was thinking it was going to show on my screen. Oh, let's see.
See it, Jen?
Barely. I thought I was gonna get an extra screen, which I don't have. You may want to turn, can you turn a little bit?
I can.
Okay,
Let me know when.
okay. That's good. Thank you.
And Your Honor, where did you want the witness to sit? We've done it several different places now, so
Well, is he coming into this side?
you can, Your Honor.
Okay, let's bring you over this side, officer, and that way you'll be a little closer to the. I don't know if you could see from over there.
Where would you like me to go?
Come over to this side if you don't mind, by council,
Sure.
by the state. It's a chair over there too.
Oh, there's a.
Either way,
Okay.
you don't want to sit, as I call them, the church benches are not as comfortable.
Oh, yeah, so maybe the chair.
If you want to, it's up to you.
I'm fine.
You're fine. You won't be there terribly long.
Okay.
Okay, all right. We're ready to proceed, council?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Judge. Do you want to go ahead and swear me in?
Stand up, please. Raise your right hand for me. Do you affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth under the penalty of perjury?
I do, yes.
All right, thank you. May I be seated?
Good morning, Officer Lasik. Is that how you pronounce your name?
Lazic,
Lazik, I apologize.
sorry, good morning.
Good morning. Can you introduce yourself to the court and tell the court how it is that you are employed?
Sure. My name is Alexander Lazic.
Hold on a second. I'm gonna have you, I think they can hear you and we're trying to record as well. So I'm at least have you to stand up, but that mic is pretty good. So I think it's picking you up.
Okay. My name is Alexander Lazic. I was employed with the Sandy Springs Police Department up until about a month and a half ago. I was a sergeant. My most recent role with the Sandy Springs Police Department was a sergeant in the technology unit. Currently, I'm in the private sector, and I'm still a reserve officer with my full post credentials.
And when you say you're a reserve officer, what agency is that with?
With Sandy Springs.
Still with Sandy Springs?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You can have a seat. And how long were you employed with Sandy Springs total before you left about a month and a half ago?
Just a little short of 8 years.
And how long were you employed in law enforcement in total?
Close to 14 years. Prior to Sandy Springs, I was with the Fulton County Police Department on the south side.
Okay, and in Sandy Springs, where you were employed on November 1st of 2018?
Yes.
Okay. Can you describe your duties as an officer for Sandy Springs Police Department?
At that time, I was a sergeant on patrol for the evening shift, working from 6 p.m. to 0600 hours a.m. in the morning, supervising a squad of about 6 officers
Okay.
in the North District of Sandy Spring.
And as a patrol officer, specifically, what were your duties and responsibilities day to day?
Investigate crimes, make arrests, supervise a shift of officers, approve reports, handle any complaints. Respond to emergency calls.
And are you, or were you post-certified on that day?
Yes,
Are you currently post-certified?
yes.
And can you just briefly explain what that means to be post-certified?
To be a law enforcement officer in the state of Georgia, you have to have your post certification, and there's certain training requirements annually that you must comply with in order to get your authority, which is basically to make arrests and investigate crimes based on reasonable articulable suspicion.
Okay. And you said specifically that at that time you were a patrol sergeant. Can you tell the court a little bit about what that entails?
I might have already mentioned it. So we have two districts in Sandy Springs, a north and a south. Each district has one sergeant. It's changed a little bit right now, but at that time there was two sergeants on patrol supervising about 6 officers each. Basically, you'd monitor the radio, make sure officers are responding to calls, backing officers up, approving reports. If citizen wanted to speak to a supervisor, I would go and respond or call them. Dispatch would frequently call the supervisor with certain issues or to pick up prisoners at different jurisdictions. So there's a lot of things that we actually did.
Okay. With regard to you being a patrol sergeant, were there occasions when you yourself would patrol and make stops?
Yes, of course.
All right. And how many traffic stops and encounters would you say that you had?
That's kind of hard to answer, but obviously, for an officer, managing a shift, but you also, come upon things, you have to take action, depending on the severity. Your primary concern is supervising and being available for the officer, but sometimes things happen and you have to take action, whether it's a traffic stop, respond to a serious emergency call.
Okay. But on this occasion of November 1st of 2018, this was not your first traffic stop, correct?
Oh, no.
You had conducted?
No, I would consider myself a very proactive officer and sergeant.
Okay. While working as a patrol sergeant and making stops yourself, how many or what percentage of the stops that you made would you say involved alcohol?
As a sergeant, probably not very much, but as an officer, I would say I've probably made anywhere from 15 to 20 DUI arrests. If I had to give a reasonable estimate.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
If I had to give a reasonable estimate.
And those are specifically arrests, correct?
Correct.
Would you say that the number of stops or encounters may be higher? Would that be accurate to say?
Yes.
Okay. You stated that you were working evening shift and that is from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And is that the time that you were on duty specifically on November 1st of 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you in uniform on that day to include your badge?
Yep, fully dressed in uniform and in a fully marked patrol car, Sandy Springs on the sides and blue lights.
Okay. Where were you located, and tell the court what you were doing?
Just basic routine patrol. I was driving north on Roswell Road, approaching Morgan Falls Road. That's in the area of the North Annex of Fulton County, Government Center. That was my location.
Okay, and approximately what time were you in that area?
I think it was around 2:30 in the morning.
Okay, and did you have an opportunity to encounter an individual by the name of Wycliffe Chakua in the early morning hours of that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you tell the court how it is that you came to encounter Mr. Chakua?
Sure. Like I said, I was driving north on Roswell Road, full uniform, fully marked patrol vehicle, and I observed a silver Chrysler 300 traveling in the opposite direction, going past me. He was actually driving in the center turn lane. So that obviously caught my attention. So I kept looking behind and he kept going in the center turn lane past the 300 feet. So then that's when I turned around to investigate further, based on the traffic violation of improper use of center turn lane. At that moment in time, I had sufficient probable cause to stop and cite the driver. So that's when I turned around and I caught up to the Chrysler 300. It was stopped going southbound in lane 1 on Roswell Road at Dalrymple. There was a red light. I was behind the vehicle. And then I observed that the traffic signal had turned green and the driver did not continue straight for about 30 seconds. So in addition to probable cause for improper center turn lane, I had an additional offense of failure to obey the traffic control device. So I about 30 seconds later, he proceeded to go straight, and then I observed multiple failure to maintain lane violations, where he was going from lane 1 to lane 2, no turn signal, just kind of weaving, and then he actually rode in between lane 1 and 2 for a little bit. At that time, based on my observations of the driving behaviors, based on my probable cause for 3 offenses now, to include failure to maintain lane, and all my knowledge, training, experience, I reasonably suspected that he might be an impaired driver. That's when I turned on my vehicle's emergency equipment and initiated a traffic stop of the driver. The vehicle pulled in, I think, at 6700 Roswell Road, which is a private driveway to a community. I went ahead and approached the driver, who
I need to stop you there before we get to you approaching the driver and actually making contact.
Okay.
Do you recall approximately how many times that vehicle failed to maintain its lane? I know you said multiple times.
I don't, just reviewing my report, I believe it says several times. I don't have an accurate number, but I did activate my vehicle's dash camera system, which we've upgraded to Axon dash camera systems. That was the old L3 system, and I know, being in the technology unit at Sandy Springs, we did have issues with the servers of the L3 system. So I know you mentioned that you weren't able to pull the dash camera footage, but without viewing that, I wouldn't be able to tell you accurately, unfortunately. But I did observe it several times.
Okay, so you are sure that the defendant failed to maintain his lane of travel?
Multiple times.
Okay, and I heard you say, when we were talking about failing to maintain the lane of travel, that he was going in and out of different lanes without using a signal. But then you also said something about traveling in 2 lanes at once. Can you just
Sure.
expound on that?
So Roswell Road has a center turn lane with yellow indicators. It's got a left lane, which we call lane number 1 in police lingo terminology, and then we have lane number 2. So he was weaving between these 2 lanes, failing to maintain, and then he actually rode in between lane 1 and 2 for a little bit. That's what I meant.
Okay, and at all times prior to stopping the vehicle and you're observing the vehicle in motion, did you observe Mr. Chikua in actual physical control of the vehicle?
Yes, so when I stopped him, he came to a stop 6700 Roswell Road. I approached the driver, requested his driver's license, and Mr. Chikua provided me with a valid Georgia driver's license, which, looking at the license and the identification and the driver, I reasonably identified him as Mr. Chikua, who's the defendant.
Okay. And that area of Roswell Road and Morgan Falls Road, and eventually that particular address that you cited as where you stopped him, is that squarely within the bounds of Fulton County?
Fulton County, Sandy Springs, yes, ma'am.
I heard you say that you asked the defendant for his driver's license. Did he comply with your request?
Yes, ma'am.
And go ahead and pick up where you left off when you approached the vehicle.
Basically, approached the vehicle, asked him for his driver's license, which he provided to me. I think I saw reviewing the video to prepare for this trial. He had a little cut on the left side of his face. I think I asked him about that. I asked where he was coming from, and he said, Tony's, which is a sports bar down the street, which him coming southbound in Roswell Road. It appears that he was coming from that direction. So it appears that he was truthful in telling me that he was coming to Tony from Tony's sports bar, obviously alcohol involved. Just the only other observation I had reviewing the video and my report was that he had watery bloodshot eyes and then slurred speech. And at that point, I went ahead and requested to see if there was another officer available that could handle the incident. Being a sergeant, I can't be tied up because DUIs generally take a little bit longer. I went ahead and saw if anybody was available to handle the remaining portion of this incident. And that's when shortly after Officer Bronkoff responded and took over the investigation, and I turned it over to him. I had nothing further to add.
Okay. And when you approached that vehicle and first made contact with the defendant, how close would you say that you were to the defendant at that time?
Standing right outside the driver door, so I'm a foot or two away.
And is it at that time that you made those physical observations of the defendant's person?
That's correct. While interacting with him, he was seated in the driver's seat and I was standing outside of the door.
Okay. And did I hear you correctly that with regard to his speech, you noticed that it was slurred?
Yeah, it appeared to be a little bit of a slur to me.
Okay. Now, you had never encountered Mr. Chikula prior to this date, correct?
Correct. Not to my knowledge.
Okay, and you had never heard him speak before, correct?
Correct.
So in your opinion, based on your training and experience, how was it that you determined that his speech was slurred?
Just with the way he was talking, he was very slow speaking, and just how the words were coming out of his mouth. That's one of the clues, so to speak, when you're making DUIs. You know, you have vehicle in motion, you observe certain things that help you build a case, and then interaction with the driver, whether it's bloodshot eyes, slurred speech. That's something that we're taught in some of the classes for DUI that I've taken in the past. And if you I had incidents where defendants, you ask for your driver's license, they hand you a credit card. So that's just some of the interactions. I mean, did that make the case? No, just a simple observation.
Okay. And did Mr. Chikula, the defendant, appear to have any type of accident at all?
I say it again.
Did the defendant appear to have any type of accident
Accident?
at all? Do you recall?
I believe so.
Okay. But you didn't attribute the slurred speech to an accident?
No.
Okay. You stated that he indicated to you that he had been coming from Tony's. Did he state what it is that he had to drink or eat at Tony's?
I don't believe I asked him that. Might be a good question for Officer Orca.
Okay. Did the defendant provide a reason for why it is that he was failing to maintain his lane so many times?
I don't believe I went into that with him. Just based on the totality of circumstances, I had sufficient reasonable suspicion to detain him further to investigate the DUI.
Yeah. And in your training and experience, would you describe his previous driving as erratic in some way?
I would say it was very unsafe. I mean, even though it's 2:30 in the morning, there could be other drivers, pedestrians, and if he's riding the center turn lane, unable to maintain lane, being stopped at a green light. I mean, those are all things that could have led to someone getting injured, and we've had a lot of fatalities on Roswell Road, so it's definitely very serious.
Okay. And in your experience, does erratic or unsafe driving, as you describe it, can it sometimes involve alcohol impairment?
Yes, it usually does.
Okay. Did you observe anything else about the driver's behavior or demeanor?
No, I mean,
And you stated that you made a call to have another officer come out and perform a DUI investigation. Is that correct?
yes, ma'am.
And I just want to verify that. Did you make that call because I believe you said you as a sergeant don't necessarily have the ability to stay out there on scene for extended periods of time? And is that the reason why you called out another officer?
Correct. Like I said, DUIs generally take a little bit longer. Being a supervisor, it wouldn't have been prudent for me to be out of service handling the entire incident, making a transport to jail and potentially, breathalyzer or getting blood. So I know there was officers on the ship that were really proficient in performing DUI investigations. So I thought the best course of action was to call another officer on scene to handle.
Okay. And how long, do you recall how long it took Officer Veronica to arrive?
It wasn't more than 5-10 minutes, I don't think.
Okay. And once he arrived, did he take over the DUI investigation portion of the defendant?
That's correct. I briefed him on all my observations and interactions, which gave him what he needed to proceed with the case.
And did your part of the traffic stop conclude at that point?
It did. I do recall something. I did show Officer Veronica. The old video systems have a little monitor in the car. So I played that for him, and I showed him some of the maneuvers that I observed of the driver.
Okay. And was that the end of your involvement in this case until you were called to court today?
Yes.
One moment. Nothing further from the state at this time, Judge.
All right.
May I proceed?
Yes.
Good morning, Officer Lazick.
Good morning, sir.
Did I say that right?
Yes.
My name is Jay Srinath. I represent Mr. Chakua. Just wanted to go over a few things regarding the traffic stop. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I want to pick up where you first approached my client. You said you got close to him, correct?
Be a little bit more specific.
How close did you get to him?
From the car, like imagine car being stopped right here and you're approaching it and talking through someone through the window. So a couple of feet.
So you came to him from the driver's side, correct?
Yes.
So you were within a couple of feet of him? Okay. And you said that initially you asked him for his driver's license, correct?
Right.
And he complied with the request.
Yes.
Okay. Did he have to stumble to or look hard to get his driver's license to you?
I don't believe so, but I believe it's on video. We can all take a look afterwards.
There's no mention of that in your report as far as him having issues with stumbling or trying to find his license. Does that mean that he was able to comply with that request?
Yes, he provided me with his driver's license.
Okay. And there was no other person in the vehicle, correct?
Correct.
And you asked him about where he was coming from, correct?
Yes.
And he told you that he was coming from a bar called Tony's, correct? And he gave you specific directions as to where he was coming from to where the traffic stop was, correct?
No, I think he just said he was at Tony's.
Okay. And did he not mention about which direction he was coming from?
From my recollection, I think he just said Tony's, but I'm
Okay,
not 100% sure.
maybe I misheard you. I thought in direct examination, you said he gave proper information about the direction that he was coming from.
No, what I meant to say, or what I said was, he said he was coming from Tony's, which where I observed him coming southbound on Roswell Road. Is very probable he was coming from Tony's because Tony's is located just north of that location off of Roswell Road. Not what he told me, but the directions. I was just explaining to the court that he said he was coming from Tony's. It appeared to be accurate based on where he was driving and where I saw him.
Gotcha. So what he was saying was consistent with where you know where Tony's is and
Right.
where he was,
You got it.
where you saw him coming.
Yes, sir.
Correct? And you didn't mention anything in your report about his clothes being disheveled or anything like that, right?
His clothes being disheveled? I don't believe I saw that in my supplement, correct?
And how many times did you go back and forth to interact with him in person?
At least once. I would have to look at the video to give you an accurate answer, but I know at least once.
And when you said you saw his eyes, what appeared to be watery bloodshot eyes.
Right.
Was he out of the vehicle and you were facing him, or was this when he was in the vehicle?
He was in the vehicle. I never got him out of the vehicle.
Okay.
So this was while I was observing him in the vehicle.
Okay. Well, how long was the interaction between you and Mr. Chakua?
At the
Approximately.
minute or so, couple minutes.
Okay. So other than a minute or so or a couple of minutes, you didn't have any interaction with Mr. Chakua, correct?
No, that would be Officer Voronkov had, very I would say extensive interaction with him. He'd be better to
So you basically passed on the information and then he took over the inquiry at that.
I passed over what I've encountered thus far, and then he took over and built on his own whatever other stuff that he
And were you still at the scene when he started his inquiry?
I believe so.
And how long did you stay at the scene? Approximately.
I don't remember. It was close to 5 years ago. I don't know if the body camera could indicate how long I was there, but I didn't just leave. So I was there for a little bit.
Were you there for any of the field sobriety tests? Do you recall?
I don't recall.
You mentioned the video a couple of times at least. I want to clarify. Going back to the incident date, November of 2018, correct?
Mhm.
Sandy Springs had a body cam and a dash cam, correct?
Correct. We had body cams, which I think were recently issued to the officers. The vendor is Axon. The camera upgrades for the vehicles didn't come until a little bit later, and that same vendor would have been Axon, known better as Taser. But we were still running in the dash cameras. We were still running with an older system called L3. So,
Okay. So I want to focus on the dash cam video.
okay.
The patrol vehicle that you were driving, is that a patrol vehicle that was assigned specifically to you?
Yes.
And about how long from November 2018 were you using that particular vehicle?
I can't recall. I mean, I couldn't tell you, but it was assigned to me. It was a Ford Explorer, and I drove it until I got transferred to the technology unit.
And when it was assigned to you, does that mean that you were the only officer that used it at that time?
Right, it was assigned to me. I drive it home. I'm the only one that drives it. If it has to go to the mechanic, I can get a pool car while it gets fixed and it gets back. I get it back.
Gotcha. So it wasn't a patrol vehicle shared by other officers at the time?
Right.
Okay. So this patrol vehicle has you said it was a L3 dash cam?
That's the name of the vendor, which it's changed now to called Safe Fleet.
Okay. So back in November of 2018, when this incident took place, the patrol vehicle had an L3 dash cam, correct? Okay. And as far as you know, it was working on that day, correct?
Yes, sir.
And tell me what you did to turn on the dash cam on that particular day.
So there's a little monitor, very outdated, old technology with a couple of buttons like play, stop, and record. So if you turn on your lights, it automatically starts recording. There's a pre-event buffer, which goes back 30 seconds. So whenever you hit record or you turn on your lights, it's always recording, but it goes back 30 seconds. So when I turned around and got behind him, I believe at Dalrymple is when I turned it on, and then it would have seen everything
Okay. So,
from that point on.
and now would it have gone back 30 seconds from the time you turned it on?
Right.
Okay. And what would it have captured 30 seconds prior to when you turned it on?
Potentially, it could have caught him initially passing me as I was going northbound, and he was going southbound. I don't know, but depending on how long it took me to turn around, catch up to him, I think it could have caught that incident as well.
So it's possible it could have caught pretty much the entire driving observations
Correct.
that you saw.
Right.
That was on the video. So obviously then it's fair to say then it would have captured what you said in your report, the lane violations that you observed.
Yes, sir.
Right? Okay. And it would have captured the time that you approached his vehicle, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Is there anything you would have done to turn off that L3 recording?
No, I mean, at the end of the stop, we press stop and we save it. There's like 4 categories. And then we just save it, and then it automatically uploads. When you get to the police department, it automatically uploads to the servers that we have on premises over there.
Okay, so in this particular traffic stop, you would have been doing the same thing you would have done with the L3 system with other traffic stops, correct?
Correct. And in addition, with the newly implemented body cameras, we have, 2 videos.
But just to be clear, the body cam does not capture any of the driving observations, correct? Is that correct?
It wouldn't have, it wouldn't have.
And so the L3 dash cam, if you were doing what you typically done with that, you would have turned it off right about the time you were leaving the scene, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I may have turned it off, when Officer Veronica arrived, just to show him the video. Because I did play it in that screen to Officer Veronica so he could see for himself what I had observed based on looking at the front dash camera video.
And there were no reports to your knowledge that the L3 dash cam was malfunctioning or anything?
It wasn't malfunctioning. The problem is afterwards, the server malfunctioned, nothing to do at that time.
So I noticed that you testified that you were a supervisor for Sandy Springs Police Department, correct?
Yes,
Back in November of 2018.
correct.
And you also work in the technology department at Sandy Springs Police?
Shortly, I was a sergeant for about a year, and then I got transferred, so to speak, to the technology unit. There was a new position that they created, technology and innovation sergeant. So that's based on my background education, I kind of fit into that role. So I got that role, and I was in that role until I became a reserve officer and went to the corporate sector full time.
So can you walk me through what the protocol is on how the L3 video footage is retained and saved?
Sure. So there's a device, and a typical officer probably wouldn't be able to explain it as I am now, but inside the patrol vehicle in the center console, usually there's like a a DVR box that's constantly recording while the car's on. So you have that apparatus, and then you have a little screen, like I told you, a little video screen that basically shows you when you turn the cameras on, it basically shows you the view of the camera. On that little panel, there's a play, stop, forward button, back button, and record button. And like I said, if you turn on your lights, it automatically turns on the video. And then we had the little mic packs on our belts that obviously, since you're out of the car, that was the mic that picks up the audio for the dash camera. So that records on this DVR, and it has SD cards inside the DVR. So it records all the data on the SD cards. And then obviously it has a limit of how much, and it tells you how much data is available on the SD card. So it retains that there. Those devices, SD cards, are protected by keys. So an officer can basically go in there and take out that SD card. So it's fully secure with redundant measures in place. As soon as you go back to the police department, they had antennas on the back of the buildings that would act like the wireless signal to communicate with the L3 system and wirelessly offload that video. And it tells you on the screen that it's uploading. And then it indicates that all the video has been uploaded.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. So let's take it, the information in the car or the storage in the car is a DVR box of some sort?
Correct.
Your Honor, did you mean to be muted? Okay.
When did you get that?
There was, I can't give you any firm dates, but there has been issues with that server. IT had to get involved. We had to get the vendor involved. We were able to retain the data. I can go more in depth, but we were able to retain and extract some of that data. And then some Windows updates caused issues because it uses the old, Windows Explorer browser where it updated to Edge and they took out, Windows Explorer. So that caused issues, but I think our IT department was able to resolve it. So stuff on the server, to the best of my knowledge, prior to me leaving, we were able to get. And then stuff that was older, because obviously the server can only hold so much. That L3 system is designed to offload on Blu-ray discs and archive videos. So, stuff from like 2012, 13, records could go in, find the video, and the system would say, hey, this is on disc 1, 2, 3, 4. And in the records room, they got a bunch of bins on top of all the files, and they pull DVD 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, here's the video, and then they can copy it.
So with regard to this time frame, we're talking about November 2018.
So based on that, I think that's still on the server. It was never offloaded to the disk.
Okay.
So we had issues accessing data on that server.
And that's what I was going to ask you. When did you said you had issues accessing data? Was that in 2021, 2020?
There were several. I couldn't give you an accurate, but I know we've had several issues with that server. I don't want to give you an inaccurate time frame. I know potentially we had some issues in 2019. We had some issues maybe in 2021. I was actually working on a project to have Axon or another vendor extract all that data and save it into the cloud. So that was an option we were looking at. And then we're also looking at getting that new vendor called Safe Fleet that, bought L3 to have them redo all the servers. So it was just kind of a cost analysis that we were doing on that. And I believe the department budgeted the funds to go ahead and go with Safe Fleet to retain and extract all that data that was on the server.
So as far as you know, because of the server issues, there were issues that you weren't able to, or Sandy Springs Police Department could not retain and save this video, and that could have been discovered anytime in 2019, 2020. You just don't know when, correct?
I don't think it was an issue with retaining and saving. I think the video is on the server. The problem was getting to that server to get that video. So the video is there. The problem is accessing the server to get the video. That's the issue. The video exists. It's on the server. As long as the server, we had a hard drive fail, but there's redundancy. So the video is there. It's just the issue of getting it off the server for the court to view.
So picking up on that, so the video is there. So it's a basic issue with manpower.
Negative
Hours.
access, technical glitches to access the files because the issues with the server.
Right, but what I'm asking is, can those, with regard to this particular video, you say the video is there on the server, but there are issues accessing it, correct? Can those issues be resolved to where you can access it?
They may be resolved currently, yes, but we've had issues where we weren't able to get the data.
But not
Here,
here.
I don't know the current status.
And I'm gonna object. I think this question's been asked and answered. I'm also gonna object to relevancy. We're here for RAS to stop the vehicle and probable cause and ask council to move along.
All right, I will sustain the objection and we'll move along a little bit to the stop.
Okay. Now, with regard to the, I've read your report and you've testified that the issues that the interaction you had with my client, you said you had noticed bloodshot eyes and, as you said, slight slurred speech, correct?
Correct.
Nothing further, Judge.
All right, thank you.
One great question, Judge.
Okay.
Officer Lysak, you testified on cross that you observed his bloodshot eyes while the defendant was still in the vehicle. On direct, you testified that this occurred approximately 2 or 2:30 a.m. I believe. Would it have been dark at that time?
Yes, but I believe reviewing the video, there was sufficient lighting
Okay, so
in the
there was-
area, residual lighting from the neighborhood, the street. But it was night, it was dark, yes,
So the lighting is what allowed you to actually see his eyes, the defendant's eyes, correct?
correct.
Nothing further, Judge.
Okay. All right, is this witness excused? There's no other questions for this witness? Okay. All right, you may be excused. Thank you, officer.
Top my cat, it was fine.
Oh, okay. It's dating. Sorry, dating your age.
Yeah. Yes.
And Your Honor, at this time, the state will call on Officer Veronica.
Okay. The other officers should just sit
Okay, yes, ma'am.
sitting out there.
Officer Veronica, Officer Veronica, please come to the report.
Counsel, if you pending, however you want to set it up, I know it's a little awkward, yeah.
So the witness, she's right here.
Generally, but I have
Okay, you're on
staff
my-
in it, so we're a little different, right. There, he was sitting there and we may bring that chair up so you can watch the video a little bit on this chair. Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Sorry, unusual stuff. It's all big.
And we have a lot of cords, so we want to
I understand, Your Honor.
be a little careful with our technology. Those one trips.
Another podium.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, just go right in front of the podium.
There we go. You can,
Benefits council can see. It's fine.
I'm fine.
This ain't sworn.
no, sweet.
Thank you, officer, please stand and be sworn. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give them out of court, the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God, so help you. I do. Thank you, sir. You may be seated.
And Officer Veronica, can you just clarify the pronunciation of your name for the court and myself, please?
Yes, you've got it right, Detective for all call.
Detective Veronica. And how is it that you're currently employed, Detective Veronica?
I'm for Sandy Springs Police at Polk County.
Okay. And how long have you been employed with Sandy Springs?
I've been employed with Sandy Springs Police since 2008, October 2008, and before that I was employed with the Cobb County Police from 2003.
So would that be about 20 years in law enforcement total?
It'll be 19 years certified officer in July.
Okay. And is that about 15, roughly 14, 15 years with Sandy Springs?
Yes, ma'am.
And the Sandy Springs Police Department where you were employed on November 1st of 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can you describe your duties as a detective at that time? Were you a detective?
I was uniform patrol.
Okay. And can you describe your duties at that time working for Sandy Springs Police Department?
Yes, enforce criminal and traffic law, make forcible arrests, search warrants, and protect and defend the Constitution of the United States and the state of Georgia.
And are you currently post-certified?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you post-certified on November 1st, 2018?
I was.
Can you tell the court a little bit about any DUI, specialized DUI training or experience that you have?
Yes, I'm certified in the state of field sobriety test. We were just there. And they gave me around 150 DUIs in my career.
And does your training include hands-on as well as classroom experience or training? Okay, can you expound on that a little bit?
Yes, it includes classroom training as well as live students, before the standing field sobriety. Horizontal Jesus diagnosis walking through, one leg standing test on, volunteers.
And when you say live subjects, are you talking about real people?
Yes,
Okay. And do those people drink alcoholic beverages to your knowledge?
yes, they do.
Okay. Is the amount of alcohol that they've consumed known to you at the time that you're observing them?
It is not.
And what do you do with those subjects?
Those studies are intoxicated at different degree levels, some very close to 0.08, others right over 0.02. And students practice on those people to make sure, and some of them are below the limit as well. So we practice on those people with HGN walking through on leg stand, and make a determination there.
Would it be accurate to say that the purpose of that observation and training is that to simulate the real life effects of alcohol on an individual?
Yes, that's accurate.
Okay. Do you know approximately how many arrests that you've made in the field? I think you said earlier.
DUI arrests, let's just say around 115 years.
Would you say that as far as DUI stops go, that would be more than 150 over those years?
Yes, absolutely. There are plenty of people that were not on these suspected DUI that were drove home.
Okay. And do some of those arrests include you not being the stopping officer, but being an officer that was called out to investigate the DUI?
That's correct, yes.
And on November 1st, 2018, do you recall what time you were on duty?
2:31 a.m.
Is that your regular shift?
I believe it was from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. that day. That's it.
And were you in uniform to include your badge?
I was.
And were you going to mark patrol vehicles?
I wasn't even marked for.
Okay. And do you recall the location to which you responded?
Yes, 6700 Roswell Road, Sandy Springs, in Fulton County.
Okay. And how was it you were made aware of the need to respond to that location?
Sergeant Lazick contacted me, requested that I stick to the traffic's not possible impaired driving.
Okay. Do you recall how long it took you to arrive there?
Yes, 5 to 10 minutes. That time to the city.
Okay.
During the rain city that time.
And when you arrived, who did you speak with?
I spoke with Sergeant Lazick.
Okay, and what did he inform you?
He briefly explained the traffic stop. He showed me a video. There's a screen inside the car. And it briefly showed me what he taped Mr. Chakua driving in center lane. He explained to me that he was failing the center lane. I think he said he failed to obey a traffic control device. He was stopped at a green light.
Okay. And did you make contact with Mr. Chakua?
I did.
And in what county is 6700 Roswell Road?
Sandy Springs, Fulton County.
Okay. Before we get into the actual events that occurred when you encountered the defendant, I do want to ask you a few questions about your body cam from that day. Was your patrol vehicle or your uniform equipped with a camera?
Both a patrol vehicle and I had a body cam visual.
Okay, which one of those would have captured your encounter with the defendant?
Both were captured and we've since switched video systems.
Okay. Okay. And at that time, was it routine for Sandy Springs Police uniform to be equipped with a body camera?
Yes,
Okay. And can you tell the court how it is that it is activated?
the body camera, press the button and center your chest twice. There'll be a beep letting you know the camera's on.
And did you in fact on this day press that button to activate it prior to your encounter with Mr. Chakua?
I did.
Okay, and what angle does that body cam record?
It should report straight forward.
And did it appear to be working normally on November 1st, 2018?
Yes,
Have you had an opportunity to view that body cam video prior to today's hearing?
I did.
I'm gonna play you a portion. Oh. I'm sorry. This council did stipulate to
Yep.
body cam.
That's correct, Judge.
I will go ahead and play now.
I'm going. Hey, sir. Boss, you wake up? I need you to wake up, please. The officer present spoke with you, just explained to me why you stopped, you were leaving it out of light. You said you were coming from the bar? Yes. Okay. Okay, so but I was my name. I know my name. I know my way. So that's exactly what I was thinking. Okay, well, the reason he stopped is concerned that he may have had too much to drink and was driving. That's why he stopped. Now that I speak to you, your eyes are watery, they're bloodshot, I can smell alcohol coming from your breath. If you're sleeping when I come up here. You weren't sleeping? Okay. I'd like you to step out of the car, please. Take out your earpiece. I don't have any earpiece. What is that firing to your shoulder? Right over here, sir. That's right here. What is it? Take it out, please. I see you wearing eyeglasses. Do you take them off for me, please, sir? Why do I take them out? I'll explain to you. Just hold the step out. Again, I'm concerned about you being able to drive safely. I would like for you to feel surprised. Okay. That's fine. Okay. Do you have any problems in your eyes? Yes. What kind of problems do you have? I see you wearing eyeglasses. I wear glasses. Okay. Do you have astigmatism? What is that? Astigmatism. It's an eye condition. I don't know what that is. Okay. Are you wearing contact lenses or anything? No. Okay. What I'd like for you to do, I'll explain to you, it's very simple. Follow the tip. You're on my pen with your eyes and your eyes open. Okay. So step over here. Step towards me. Okay, what's my flashlight in my head? Thanks, sir. Put your feet together, just like this. Put your hand by your sides. Just follow the tip up down with your eyes and your eyes open. Keep your head straight. Keep your chin pointed towards me, okay? Right here, look at the tip of the pen. Look at the tip of the pen. You're looking straight at me. You gotta look at the tip of the pen, okay? Look at the tip of the pen. You gotta keep your head straight, okay? You gotta keep your chin pointed towards me. Just follow with your eyes, just like that. Okay. Keep your chin towards me. Keep moving your head. You gotta keep your chin towards me. Just move the eyes. Your eyes move independently from your neck, so you should be able to move your eyes without moving your head. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Are you sure you understand? Okay. Look at the tip of my pen. You're looking at me. Look at the tip of my pen. Keep your chin pointed towards me. Look at the tip of my pen. Just look at my flashlight. You have to look at the tip of my pen. Look at it. Do you feel comfortable? I'll look at your eyes. You're not looking at your pen. Okay. So you feel comfortable? You want to do something else instead? No. Fine. Okay. Let's try it another time. Okay. Okay. I would like for you to put your feet together. Keep your head by your side. I'll explain this again. Just look right here. So you gotta follow on the tip. Look at my eyes. See that? Don't move your head. Okay. Excellent. Okay, you keep moving your neck. So we'll try something else. It's okay. No. That's something. Are you sure? You should tell me you're able to do it. I wasn't moving my hand like that. Right, move your head. Just okay. I'm going to explain this. You understand? I understand. Okay. Look at the tip of my pen. Keep your chin pointed towards me. Move your eyes independently. Okay, don't move your neck. Look where my finger is. Tip of my pen. You're looking straight in the eyes. You gotta look up here. Don't close your eyes. Look at my flashlight. You're moving your eyes left and right. Okay, it's okay. We'll try something else. Do you have any problems with your legs? Do you have any problems with your hips? No. Knees or anything like that? You go walk in a straight line. No. Okay, we're not going to be doing gymnastics here. I just want to be able to see if you're able to follow multiple dimensions, multitasking. It's the same way like driving requires you to be able to steer, work the gas, the brake, you look out for the traffic, maintain lane. Okay, all right. So what I'd like for you to do is put your right foot in front of you, put your heel to toe. Okay, keep your hand. Don't start just yet. Look at my feet. Take your right foot, put it in front of you up, touch your heel to toe. Stand there. I'm explaining to you what I'd like for you to do. Okay. Don't lean on the car. Okay. Touch just like this. Right foot in front of left. Touch your heel to toe. Stand right there. I'll explain what I want you to do. Okay. Just a moment. I told you to start. You're gonna walk down heel to toe steps, just like this. You're gonna shout out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once you get to 9, you're gonna turn around to a small series of steps, just like this. You're gonna walk down 9 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 9. While you're doing that, I want you to touch heel to toe. I want you to count out loud. I want you to keep your hands by your sides. And once you start, don't stop. Do you have any questions, please, sir? 9 steps. 9 steps. Okay, look again. Walk heel to toe, teach your heel to toe. 9 steps. Count out loud. Keep your hands by your sides. And once you start, don't stop. Do you have any questions? Okay, whenever you're ready. Else, you're out. This one. Yes. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, just face me, stand right there. You are watching these 30 seconds. My body can't just down. In just a moment, keep it up. Put your feet together just like this. Okay, keep your hands by your sides. Okay, don't start. I'm going to explain to you what I'd like for you to do. Okay, in just a moment, you're going to pick either foot, whatever you feel comfortable with. Don't start just yet. Keep your feet together just like this. Okay, yes, sir. You're going to pick either foot you feel comfortable with. You're going to lift one foot off the ground just like this. You're going to lift it 6 inches off the ground. You're going to point your toes. You're going to keep your knees straight. You're going to count 1,001, 1,002, 1,003, 1,004, 1,005, until I tell you to stop. While you're doing that, keep your hands by your sides, lift your foot 6 inches off the ground, point your toe, keep your knees straight. If you happen to put your foot down, lift it back up and start off left off. Do you have any questions? Okay. Whenever you're ready, start. Just let me know your second. Go ahead, continue. Okay. All right. Look around, put your hands back. You can place on the rest of you line. I think you have anything too much to do with that. I don't know if something to you down with you before I answer any questions. I know you have a lot of questions. What do you want to do? Just come on. Okay, I gotta read something to you. There's no second chances. I have to read something you want. I know so. State medical tests, your blood, breath, urine, or other bodily substances for the purpose of determining if you're under the influence of alcohol or drugs. If you refuse the steps to your driver's license or privilege to drive on the highways of the state will be suspended for a minimum period of 1 year. Your refusal to submit to the required state testing may be offered in evidence against your trial. If you submit to testing, it results in alcohol concentration of 0.08 grams or more for a driver's license or privilege to drive on the highways of the state, be suspended for a minimum period of 1 year. After first attend the required state test, you're entitled to disreputable test your blood, breath, urine, or other bodily substances at your own expense and for qualified personnel who may choose it. When you submit to the state administrative blood test under applied to the law. When you submit to the blood test. I got you. Okay, before I do this, any questions, don't feel submission of blood test. We're gonna do a chemical test of the blood. Can I do that again? No. You're under arrest, if you are. I can read that like I said to you again, give this to for some, if you don't want to. Yep, that yours? Can I do that one more time? Okay. No, so you're under arrest, I can read them like I said on you, yeah. We take the blood test. Okay, come on.
Officer Veronica, we see that as you approach the vehicle, the defendant appears to be still in the vehicle. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And is he in the driver's seat?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell the court the observations that you made of the defendant when you observed him in the driver's seat?
He appears to be sleeping in the driver's seat.
What about any other observations with regard to his appearance?
He looks slightly disheveled. When I first started speaking to him, when I woke him up, I just felt him fall on his breath, calling beverage on his breath. The speech appeared to be slow and slurred, and his eyes were bloodshot.
And I heard you say that you could smell the odor of alcohol. Were you able to tell if that was coming from his person or the vehicle itself?
I smelled him when he spoke, so I believe it was a from his breath.
And you have experience identifying the odor of alcohol, is that correct?
Yes.
Would you describe that experience as extensive?
Yes.
Okay. And would you describe the odor as strong, moderate, or faint?
It was moderate.
And it did not appear that there were any other occupants of the vehicle. Could you tell if there were?
I could tell the vehicle was only occupied by
Okay. It appears from the video that you asked the defendant to step out of the vehicle. Why did you do that?
I wanted the criminal because by to verify he was something.
Did you notice anything as he exited the vehicle from the defendant?
He appeared to be exit out of the car slow.
Okay.
So what I was.
Did the defendant make any statements to you about where it is he was coming from?
He did.
What did he
I
say?
asked him if he was coming from the bar or if he was coming from Tony's from the bus.
Okay. And when you were speaking with him about where he was, indicate to you what he had to drink or to eat?
I don't believe so.
Okay. After you got out, excuse me, asked the defendant to get out of the vehicle, did you ask him to perform field sobriety evaluation?
I did.
Okay, and it appears that the defendant agreed. Was that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Specifically, what did you perform there on the video?
I attempted to perform the horizontal gaze nystagmus, then the walking turn, the one leg standing test.
Okay, and with regard to the horizontal gaze nystagmus, is that what HGN stands for?
Yes.
And tell the court about your training in conducting this particular evaluation, please.
I had to do a just take sleep training and my experience conducting multiple trials.
Okay, and over the course of your career conducting DUI investigations, how many times would you say that you conducted that test?
maybe 100.
And can you tell the court exactly how you conduct that test and what you're looking for?
Prior to conducting the ASGN, the person that's qualified for the test, he must display equal tracking in the eyes and equal pupil size. Mr. Chico was unable to follow directions, qualifying for the test. Therefore, was unable to perform the ASGN.
What about the walk and turn with regard to that particular evaluation? What is that?
It's we go through the instructions where I'll notice
Well, tell the court what it is and
all these evaluations. One, see, Mr. Person can multitask, like I saw in the video. The same way as one might need when trying to start operating the gas pedal, steering, watching out for the traffic, maintaining the lane. So you give a person multiple simple instructions that a simple person's not gonna have a problem doing. During the walking through test, during the instructional phase, the things you look for is you're giving a person instructions, you have them put one foot in front of the other, touching heel to toe, and you making sure they're not started before you told them to start, and they keep their foot on line. After the test starts, you will give simple instructions. You have to touch heel to toe, walk 9 steps, you use right sides, count out loud, and you perform the turn that you wanted to do. You wanted to do the turn, which you use a small series of steps and walk 9 steps back in the same fashion.
okay. And the field sobriety training that you spoke about earlier at JIPS, did that include training on how to conduct the walk and turn?
Yes.
Okay. And over the course of your DUI career, how many times would you say you conducted that test?
Maybe 100 walk.
And it appeared that you actually demonstrated the test for the defendant, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what is the maximum number of clues that a person can display on that particular evaluation?
8.
And how many clues did you observe that the defendant displayed?
5.
Can you tell the court what clues you observed when your defendant performed?
During the instructional phase, he was unable to keep his foot in front of the other, touching the heel toe. In fact, he has such a hard time keeping balance that he ended up the instructional phase with both his feet side by side. He stopped to steady himself. He stepped off line. He used his arms for balance and he turned them properly. In fact, when he turned, he was walking initially from west to east. He was supposed to turn around going west. So turn around 180 degrees, turn around 270 degrees. You should saw on video facing me.
Okay. In your experience, are individuals who are otherwise medically cleared and who are not under the influence of alcohol, are they typically able to perform the walk and turn test successfully?
Yes.
Without exhibiting clues?
Correct.
Okay. Did you attribute the display of the clues to the defendant being under the influence of alcohol?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me clear, what exactly is the one leg stand?
One leg stand, you would give the person instructions to walk, in a similar fashion to walk and turn, multiple instructions to keep it in multitask. One person has to pick either leg, lift it 6 inches off the ground, one to toe, to knee straight, and count until you tell them to stop. Count about 30 seconds, but you tell them so after about 30 seconds, you stop. You don't tell them 30 seconds up front.
Okay. And did the field sobriety training that you discussed earlier at JITS, did it include training on how to conduct the one leg stand?
Yes.
And what is the maximum number of clues that a person can display on that particular evaluation?
4.
How many clues did the defendant display?
Just like 4 clues.
And tell the court what those clues were.
He swayed side to side, hit his leg down several times. He hopped when he almost fell over, trying to maintain his balance and use his arms for balance as well.
At some point, at a point during the video, when he performed the field sobriety evaluation, and he appeared to stumble, it looked like an officer walked over to him.
To make sure he was a fall
Why
over
was that?
himself.
Okay. Why is that?
So to make sure he was a fall over itself. He was there to touch him.
Okay. In your experience, individuals who are otherwise medically cleared and who are not under the influence of alcohol, are they able to successfully perform the one leg stand without exhibiting clues?
Yes.
In this case, did you attribute the clues that the defendant showed to alcohol consumption specifically?
Yes, I did.
And as an officer, and specifically a DUI investigative officer, have you had the occasion to observe people under the influence of alcohol?
I have,
How many times would you say?
more than I can count.
Are the manifestations that you observed with regard to the defendant consistent with someone that had consumed alcohol?
Yes, they were.
Do you have an opinion based on your experience and training as to whether or not the defendant as a driver on that particular night or early morning hours, whether or not he was unsafe to continue driving based on your observations of his performance on the field sobriety evaluations?
Yes, I believe he was a less safe driver.
When you determined that he was a less safe driver, what did you do then?
I placed him under arrest. And I read an implied consent notice for persons 21 or older.
At what point did you place him under arrest?
I immediately after they won this game.
And you stated that you read him complied consent?
I didn't.
Okay. And how did you determine the appropriate section to read?
English drivers, and that's the sergeant has to short him to me when I drove in the car. I determined he was older than 21.
And I thought I heard you request a blood test. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what was the defendant's reply?
Initially, he was refused. I explained to him how to use an applied consent again, and then he refused the blood test.
One moment, Judge.
Good.
Nothing further at this time, Judge.
Okay. Court.
Good morning, Detective Orca.
Good morning.
Did I pronounce your name right? I'm Jay Schoonhouse. I represent Mr. Chakula. I just said, I'm well, how are you?
Very well.
I just have a few questions. Is it fair to say that Officer Lazick, Sergeant Lazick basically handed the DUI inquiry to you when you got there?
Yes.
And is it fair to say that you had decided before you approached Mr. Chakula that you were going to make him go through a DUI investigation?
It goes a voluntary test, but yes, especially after I approached him and I was I saw him sleeping, speech in his eyes and smell alcohol. Yes.
Okay. So initially, you know that Sergeant Lazick was the one who interacted with my client, correct? Right. And you got there a few minutes after he initially started the traffic stop, correct?
That is correct.
And before you approached my client, there was no mention of any kind of odor of alcohol from Sergeant Lazick, correct?
I don't believe so. He showed me the video and he said that he was coming from Tony's Sports Bar.
So he showed you the video of the initial driving observations that Sergeant Lazick saw.
Correct.
Led the traffic stop, correct? No mention of any consumption of alcohol by Sergeant Lazick, correct?
I don't remember. He did alert me that he was possibly impaired.
He just said possibly impaired. Okay. No mention of any kind of open containers or anything like that, right? Okay. And you said he appeared to be sleeping, and I understand people have different perceptions as to what they observe. When you saw Mr. Chakula, he had his head down, correct?
His eyes were closed as well.
Okay. And it looked like he had some kind of earpiece or
Some sort of wire. Yes.
yeah. Okay. So it's possible that he may not have heard you initially when you first got right up to the window, correct?
It's 100% that he hear me because he was asleep.
Is it possible that he may have been listening to something and that may have been the reason why he was
Maybe.
I don't have any questions?
All right. You ready to go?
Nothing further, Judge.
All right. I believe the witness is excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. right, any other witnesses?
Not on behalf of the state, Judge.
All right, any more evidence on the state side?
No, Your Honor.
Any more evidence, counsel? Okay, both sides are resting. Any closing arguments by either side?
Yes, Your Honor, the state
Okay,
does have argument at this time. Your Honor, with respect to the defense's motion and the challenge of reasonable articulable suspicion in this case, you heard testimony today from the stopping officer or sergeant rather, Sergeant Lassick, that he observed the defendant's vehicle first travel in the center lane, which was a turn lane, a center turn lane, but continue going straight instead of making a turn. That raised his suspicions because at that point, the defendant had already committed a traffic infraction. And so Officer Lassick turned around and began to then follow the driver who we later was identified as the defendant, Mr. Chakua. In following Mr. Chakua, he then observed Mr. Chakua's vehicle stopped at a traffic light that turned green, and Mr. Chakua did not proceed through that traffic light for about 20 to 30 seconds, which further raised the suspicions of Sergeant Lassick. He then continued to follow him for a period of time and observed Mr. Chakua fail to maintain his lane multiple times. And in fact, he testified in his report that he rode several times. He was able to articulate to the court that he recalled the defendant's vehicle not only moving in and out of lanes without using a signal, but then also traveling in two lanes at once. So on the verge of one lane as well as another. Based on those driving observations and those violations of traffic law, the sergeant then pulled Mr. Chakua over. Your Honor, right there, we have reasonable articulable suspicion for the stop of the defendant's vehicle. Further, he approached Mr. Chakua. He saw that Mr. Chakua had bloodshot, watery eyes, and he noted that he had a slow and somewhat slurred speech that then raised his suspicions even further that perhaps Mr. Chakua was intoxicated, given those physical manifestations as well as the driving manifestations that he had just witnessed. And so he called out Officer Voronkov. We know that Sergeant Lassick could have performed the DUI investigation himself because he has done so before, but as a sergeant, he cannot remain on scene for too much longer after the stop. He's needed elsewhere. And so he called out an experienced, as you heard the testimony, DUI investigator, Detective Voronkov. Detective Voronkov told you about his experience. He's at about 19 years now in law enforcement, 15 years specifically with Sandy Springs. He has had numerous DUI investigations that he's conducted, as well as numerous DUI arrests. He specifically told you that when he goes out to a scene, it does not necessarily mean that that person is going to be arrested for DUI. Person is not arrested until after an investigation is done. And so he told you that while he's had 150 arrests, he's probably had more stops, and those stops would not have resulted in an arrest, but still he's had the experience of arresting individuals for DUI and also letting individuals go when he determined that a DUI was not present. So he approached Mr. Chakua, and as you saw from the video, immediately asked him to wake up because he saw that his eyes were closed and that he appeared to be sleeping to the officer. He further observed that Mr. Chakua's eyes were bloodshot, the same way that Sergeant Lassick told you today. And he observed heard that Mr. Chakua's speech was slow and slurred, the same way that Sergeant Lassick told you today. And in addition, he could smell the odor of alcohol coming from Mr. Chakua's breath, and he knew it was the breath because he could smell it as Mr. Chakua would speak. I asked him whether or not that odor was moderate, faint, strong. He indicated that it was moderate. And so he then determined that field sobriety evaluations needed to be performed to determine whether or not Mr. Chakua was safe to continue driving. He started with the HDN. He told you, and as you could see on the video, that the defendant could not follow those instructions. And so that particular evaluation could not be performed as it needed to be. He told you that he performed the walk and turn, which is one of the field sobriety evaluations that he is trained in at Dipstick. He told you that the clues, the maximum number of clues on that particular evaluation are 8, and the defendant displayed at least 5 of those. He told you what those were. He told you that the defendant stepped offline, that he was unsteady, that he turned improperly, used his arms for balance, and you saw in the video how the defendant stumbled, how he did not put his heel to toe as he was supposed to. And of course, you did see on video the improper turn that the defendant did. You also saw during the walk and turn another officer walk over and have to stand near the defendant because he was so wobbly and so unsteady that they were concerned that the defendant may harm himself or fall over or hurt himself. Detective Voronkov told you that he also performed or asked the defendant to perform the one-leg stand, which the defendant agreed to do. He told you that there are a maximum of 4 clues on that particular evaluation and that the defendant displayed all 4. He told you what those were, which is that the defendant placed his foot on the ground several times. You were able to see that from the video. He told you that at one point the defendant lost his balance and hopped and almost fell, which again, there was an officer there to catch him in the event of that. And so, Your Honor, you have more than enough evidence to meet the standard of probable cause that more than likely than not, the defendant in the early morning hours of November 1st, 2018, was under the influence of alcohol to the extent that he was less safe to drive, as Detective Voronkov testified. And Judge, they also testified with Sergeant Lastic and Detective Voronkov that this did occur in Fulton County. Defense counsel has stipulated, obviously, to identification. And so, Your Honor, the state, I believe, has met its burden with regard to probable cause. We would ask that you deny the defense counsel's motion to suppress on the basis that there was more than enough reasonable articulable suspicion, as well as probable cause for not only the traffic stop in this case, but also the DUI arrest.
Thank you, State. Right, yeah.
Judge.
Hmm?
With regard to the initial basis for the traffic stop, the court is aware that the officers need reasonable suspicion of a traffic violation in order to justify a traffic stop. I know the court heard testimony from the officer that the initial reason he pulled him over was because of what he observed, which is essentially lane violations that led him to turn on his blue lights and then activate the video and initiate a traffic stop. Your Honor, the reason the video is important in this case, Judge, is because the video is the only unbiased, uninterested evidence that will show whether Mr. Chakua did indeed commit the offense of a traffic violation that would justify what would be as a reasonable suspicion from the officer for a traffic violation. We're not suggesting that lane violations are not sufficient reasonable suspicion. We're asking the court and recognize that the state has the burden to show that the officer observed reasonable suspicion of traffic violations in this case, and they haven't met the burden in this case because the best evidence that would have been for the court to consider is the video in this case. And they don't have the video. They had the video at some point. They simply don't have the video at this point, or at least as best as we can tell from the officer's testimony that they're unable to retrieve it, or at least unable to retrieve it without significant inquiry or man hours, if you will, Judge. And the video is important, Your Honor, because without the video, my client is unable to show the court that he did indeed stay in his lane. He did indeed not violate the traffic laws. You heard him contesting the officer's allegation that he committed a lane violation because when you saw the video of the body cam, not the dash cam, you heard him say, "I did not do that," and something to that effect. So it would basically be something where the video would be the best evidence that there is on whether there was a traffic violation to justify the officer pulling him over. There are instances, as the court's aware, where evidence that the state has is no longer available. And the issue for the court is that a violation of my client's due process rights? And there's a case on more or less on point, Your Honor, that deals with the issue of this sort. It's Arizona versus Youngblood. It's a 1988 case, 488 US 51. And in that case, the Supreme Court was evaluating the due process violation when the state failed to preserve evidence. And that's what we have here. It's not a matter of the prosecutor not providing me with evidence that they would otherwise have. I'm not suggesting that she's not forthcoming with the evidence. I know we have communications. We have had several communications in trying to get this video. So it's a matter of the state failing to preserve the evidence. And is that a violation of due process rights for my client? And in the Arizona versus Youngblood case, Judge, the Supreme Court in that instance looked at, to make that determination, the court has to determine whether it's two factors. One is the evidence constitutionally material? And the second one is whether the police acted in bad faith, failing to preserve the evidence. Regarding the first element of materiality, I would argue to the court it is extremely material. It is relevant information. It is a video that shows there's no dispute based on the officer's testimony that that video, the dash cam video, did indeed capture the traffic infractions that he testified about. He said that it's got a mechanism where once he turns it on, which he said he did, just like in any other instance, it would record 30 seconds prior to that. He said more likely than not, he probably would have captured the point where he said he saw Mr. Chikua basically going on the opposite direction that he was, and then he had turned around and got behind Mr. Chikua. So that video has relevant information. It is the basis for the traffic stop. It is the basis for us challenging the allegations that the state is making, which is that he has committed lane violations. So there's extremely relevant and important evidence in this case. So that standard of materiality, I would suggest to the court that this video meets that standard, because we're dealing with whether the court has to determine whether there was a traffic infraction, to determine whether that was reasonable suspicion to justify a traffic stop. So the video has a traffic infraction apparently on the recording. We don't have that. It's relevant information that the defense needs and the defendant needs in this case to contest whether he did violate the traffic laws. The second prong is the bad faith, Your Honor. I'm not suggesting in any way that the Officer Lazick, had any involvement in the video not being able to be retrieved or retained or saved. I do know from listening to his testimony that apparently the system, the San Diego State Police Department had backup systems where initially the video is recorded on the DVR that's in the car. After that, it's transferred to the server in the police department. And then after that, at some point, it's depending on the age of the video, some of them are transferred to this, some of them remain on the server. His testimony is interesting because he not only worked as a patrol officer, he worked as a sergeant. He also had some role as a technology officer for the city of Sandy Springs. And I asked him, essentially, is there a way to get that? And he didn't definitively say that there isn't a way to do it. He suggested that it's a messed up system, it's outdated, it can be accessed, but they've moved over to a different system, and the budget involving this kind of stuff is limited. That's not to say that this can't be retrieved. That suggests that perhaps it can be retrieved, though it may not be easy to retrieve. But it's not a matter of convenience or how easy it is for the state. It's a matter of being able to present to the court the evidence that's the best evidence in this case for the court to decide whether there was a violation of traffic laws to justify the traffic stop. So we would ask the court to consider that this video that there's no contention that it didn't exist. We all agree that it did exist. The officer said it existed, and it apparently existed for a period of time, but it's not available at this point for the court to look at. So we would ask the court to take that into consideration in determining whether there was a reasonable suspicion to justify the traffic stop. With regard to the probable cause, Your Honor, I would just ask the court to focus on whether the officer had probable cause to prolong the traffic stop. We heard testimony from Officer Sergeant Lazick that his initial interaction with my clients was that he thought he had some sort of slurred speech, wandering bloodshot eyes, and that was the extent of what would otherwise be considered observations from an officer about possibly an impaired driver. Those are the only two observations that I recall Sergeant Lazick mentioning as far as his interaction with my client. You heard my client on the video. You can determine that. I would suggest to the court that he did not have a slurred speech. He was responsive to the officers, both officers. He told them where he was coming from. That was consistent with where Sergeant Lazick saw him in terms of where the bar was, where he first saw him, and where he conducted the traffic stop in terms of the direction. You see him complying with the officer's request to get out of the car. There's no indication that the officer had enough information at that time when he decided to prolong the traffic stop. And the officer needs probable cause that a potential defendant is an impaired driver. It's not just a matter of maybe consumed alcohol and he drove. The issue is whether the defendant or a driver in this case is an impaired driver. Is there a sufficient probable cause for the officer to say that he was an impaired driver at the point where he's prolonging the traffic stop? And I would suggest to the court that at that point, there wasn't sufficient evidence and information to rise to the level of probable cause that my client was an impaired driver.
And Connor, if I may just respond to some of the points that defense counsel has made, please.
Okay.
Your Honor, with respect to his fighting of Arizona versus Youngblood, specifically in that case, we must show wrongdoing or some type of intentional withholding for destruction of evidence by the state. You must show bad faith. Defense counsel himself says that he's not suggesting that there was any bad faith or intentional conduct or intentional wrongdoing on the part of the state or the officer in this particular case. And in fact, Sergeant Lazick testified that there was a malfunction with the servers. Now, that particular malfunction, as you heard, was nothing intentional on the part of Sandy Springs. There's nothing intentional on the part of Officer Lazick. Sergeant Lazick's testimony alone is sufficient to prove what it is that he observed and what it is that gave him suspicion or reasonable articulable suspicion to conduct the traffic stop that day. I want to point out to the court, what did we do before we had in-camera videos on patrol cars? We didn't have those up until, recently. So there's been no bias that has been established on the part of Sergeant Liz that he has no motivation to come in here and lie about what it is that he saw 5 years later. This occurred back 2018. I think that you can see how incredibly invested and important this case was to the officers, but the fact that they're still around. They were excused a while ago. They could have bolted and been on their way by now. They're still here, even to hear arguments. So, Your Honor, based on those grounds, I would ask that you deny this motion. With regard to defense counsel's arguments about the extension of the stop, first of all, that is outside the scope of the particularized motion. We are here for a reasonable articulable suspicion and probable cause, as we set forth prior to the motion. We can certainly recall the officers to talk about how long they were out there. I think Sergeant Lastick did testify that it was a couple of minutes his encounter lasted with the defendants, and then it took about 10 minutes for Officer Orca to arrive. And so we would ask that you not consider necessarily that argument, seeing as how it's outside the scope of the particularized motion. But if you were to consider it, Your Honor, not only could we have the officers come back and re-testify, but you heard that testimony about how long it took Officer Voronkov to get out there, approximately 10 minutes, which is not unreasonable at all, Your Honor. And you saw from the video that Detective Voronkov's DUI investigation lasted only as long as necessary for him to conduct his field sobriety evaluation, and then it concluded. So there wasn't any extended or extensive period of time that he was out there holding the defendant up. His investigation was very brief. I played you approximately 11 minutes of video from about when he arrived, encountered the defendant, and made the arrest and read and by consent. Not unreasonable at all. And finally, going back to the issue of the video, I do want to point out that the defense counsel himself filed an entry in this case in the municipal court of Sandy Springs back on November 28th of 2018, approximately 27 days after this incident. So if there's anyone who is in the best position to obtain that video, it would have been defense counsel. He could have done so at any time prior to handing this case over on May 1st of 2019, and prior to us accusing it in April, I believe, of 2020. And so for all of those reasons, I would ask that you deny the defendant's motion to suppress and set this case down for a jury trial.
All right. There are no more arguments. Give me a second. All right, I am ready. The court is ready to make a ruling on the defendant's motion, particularized motion to suppress. After hearing all of the evidence and the officers involved, as well as the videotape, I am going to deny the motion to suppress. I do find there is there has been a showing with the evidence of reasonable and articulable suspicion of activity or traffic violations for that original stop. I also find that there's been probable cause for the arrest, and the evidence shows that. And with the denial of that motion to suppress, this case will move forward to be set for a jury trial. All right, thank you everyone for your time.
Judge,
Have a good weekend.
maybe excuse me.
Yes, thank you officers for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mhm. That concludes. Or anything else? No. Walter. Mhm. Jordan Reiser and Angela Walter. Reiser. Uh-huh. Spell her last name, R.I. Reiser. R.I.S.E.R. And then Walter, I should remember, W.A.L.D.R. Make sure she had the name spelled. Good to see you.
I can pick up business, maybe excuse.
Yes, you may. Thank you.